Alright, stop scrolling. This is the one. Go to sleep. The complete Roman Empire saga. 400 years, all in one place. I've spent over 2 years of my life crafting this series, all by myself. Over 20 hours of content, bringing you the ultimate chronicle of Rome. From the golden age of Augustus to the peak under Trajan, through the chaos of the 3rd century crisis. Well-seeded coalition-s reforms, Constantine's new capital, and the final split after Theodosius. This was a massive undertaking. If you appreciate the effort, a like and subscribe means the world. No time. Hit save for later, so you don't lose it. Now let's begin. Welcome to the Roman MP. Let us now journey together, back through the mists of time, to the classical world of the Roman Empire. From the legendary founding of Rome in 753 BC to the fall of Constantinople in 1453 AD. Ancient Rome, as an important source of Western civilization, stood on the shores of the Mediterranean for more than 2,000 years. Not only did it leave a rich cultural heritage in the material aspect, but it also imprinted an immortal legend in the spiritual realm. Its rise and fall are worthy of our serious review, to take its essence and discard its dross. In this video, I will take the political and military map as the main perspective, supplemented by economy, culture, and religious thought, and strive to present a relatively complete history of Roman civilization for everyone. Let us, like lightning, travel back to the 8th century BC and begin this legendary journey. Similar to the ancient civilizations around the world, ancient Rome also had its own legend of the origin of civilization. Legend has it that when the Greeks conquered the city of Troy, Aeneas, the son of the goddess Venus and immortal, led his people to escape and finally came to the Latium region in central Apennines to settle down, establishing the city of Hannibal. Hundreds of years later, his descendant, King Ennu was overthrown by his younger brother, Julius. Julius killed Ennu, son, and forced his daughter, Rhea Silvia, to become a priestess. But Rhea Silvia fell in love with the god of war, Mars, and gave birth to a pair of boys. When Julius learned of this, he threw the 2 children into the Tiber River to eliminate future troubles. But there was a small accident in the follow-minus up to this matter. The 2 children, by chance, were rescued by a she-wolf and successfully grew up. They returned to the city of Hannibal to take revenge on Julius. Then the 2 decided to build a new city. A dispute arose during the naming process. The elder brother, Romulus, killed his younger brother, Remus. In 753 BC, the city was named Rome after Romulus. And according to current research, the civilization in the Tiber River basin had already risen in the 8th century BC. There were Latins, Sabines, and Etruscans and other ethnic groups here. The 7 Hills League they formed among the 7 hills on the banks of the Tiber River was the initial resident of the city of Rome. After hundreds of years of development, the initial city of Rome was finally formed. Roman civilization was born, entering the era of the monarchy. The new capital of the Tiber, Rome, had an imbalanced gender structure at its initial construction, mostly male. For the continuation of civilization, they decided to borrow the women of the neighboring Sabine village. Thus, the famous rape of the Sabine women occurred. A series of conflicts broke out between the 2 sides, but after the rice was cooked, they shook hands and made peace, jointly forming the initial Roman state. The first 5 kings of Rome were Romulus, Numidius, Tullus host Aelius, Ancius Marcius, and Tarquinius Priscus. During their rule, Rome formed a clan-based social system, with blood ties as the link. The state institutions were a tripartite situation of the king, the senate, and the curia t assembly. In the hundreds of years of the monarchical era, the Romans built a bridge over the Tiber River and built the port of Ostia. The torch of civilization gradually became brighter. During the reign of the sixth king, Servius Aulus, an important Servian reform was carried out. The main content was to establish new tribes, conduct a census of citizens' property, divide different social classes according to citizens' property, and establish corresponding obligations, and establish the centuriate assembly. His reform adapted to the social development and the needs of foreign expansion at that time, and enhanced the strength of Rome. The rule of the seventh king, Tarquinius Superbus, was dark. In the end, due to the licentious behavior of his son, the fuse of the revolution was ignited. In 509 BC, the Roman people overthrew the king. The monarchical era ended, and Rome entered the Republican era. The Rome of the Republican era formed a system, with the consul as the highest official, commanding the army, directing battles, and making many restrictions to prevent the return of royal power. The initial period of the Republic was spent in the struggle against the old royal power. The first consul, Lucius Junius Brutus, in order to maintain the Republic, even killed his two sons for the sake of righteousness. The Rome that successfully realized a constitutional monarchy had many victories and defeats in the struggle against the surrounding Sabines, Etruscans, and Samnites, and slowly expanded and developed. There were also continuous changes within Rome. The most important of these was the struggle between the patricians and the plebeians. The Roman plebeians, from 494 BC to 449 BC, carried out three secession movements. The courtyard is deep, how deep? The people crossed the city walls to go. The struggle of the heart forced the Roman nobles to carry out continuous reforms and concessions, such as setting up the tribune of the plebs and promoting the birth of the Roman written code, the 12 tables. The system and laws of Rome had made rapid progress. In the early Republic, Rome also produced a group of virtuous sages, such as Cincinnatus, who saved the country from danger but took nothing, and Camillus, who was exiled but did not hold a grudge and returned to Rome. Under their leadership, the Roman Republic showed a scene of vigorous vitality and all things flourishing. The history of the Roman Republican era was composed of continuous wars. From the 472 BC to the 392 BC, three Roman-V Iantini wars broke out. The Romans finally conquered Veii in 396 BC. One wave had not yet subsided, and another wave rose. Soon after, the Gallic tribes from south of the mountains went south and defeated the Republic. The city of Rome was burned, and the foundation of civilization was almost destroyed. But the Romans still survived tenaciously and gradually suppressed the surrounding tribes after their death. Through the three Samnite wars from 343 BC to 290 BC, Rome occupied a large piece of land in the central Apennine Peninsula and began to expand its influence to the Greek colonial city-states in the south. In 280 BC, the Greek city-states asked King Pyrrhus of Epirus for help. Pyrrhus readily agreed and went to war with Rome. In the early stage of the war, Pyrrhus, relying on war elephants and well-trained troops, won several costly victories, but could not expand the results of the war and gradually fell into a passive position. His Pyrrhic victory was also called a Pyrrhic victory. In 275 BC, Pyrrhus was defeated by the Roman consul Dentatus in the Battle of Beneventum and was forced to withdraw to Epirus. The Romans then successfully occupied the southern region of the Apennines. The Romans, who had successfully become a regional power, had a conflict of interest with their close ally, Carthage. Rome's special military operation on the island of Sicily angered the Carthaginians. So in 264 BC, the First Punic War broke out. Rome was invincible on land and, after a hard fight, finally gained an advantage in naval battles. But the attempt to land on the Carthaginian mainland failed. In the end, The exhausted two countries negotiated peace in 241 BC. Carthage ceded the island of Sicily. Rome then took advantage of the chaos to occupy the islands of Corsica and Sardinia. To the north, it defeated the Gauls south of the mountains. Around 221 BC, that is, at the same time that the first emperor of Qin unified the 6 states in the east, it basically unified the Apennine Peninsula. Rome swept the 6 directions, how majestic its tiger-like gaze. Carthage did not become depressed after its defeat. It made every effort to develop its colonies in Hispania, and its national strength continued to recover. The two countries went to war again in 218 BC. The Second Punic War broke out. The famous Carthaginian general Hannibal led his army across the Alps and went straight into the Roman mainland. He defeated the Roman army in northern Italy, and then went south all the way, winning 3 battles in a row. Especially in the Battle of Cannae, he won with a small force and almost annihilated the Roman army, which was recorded in the annals of history. Rome at the same time in the First Macedonian War in the east had no results, but Hannibal, under the strong mobilization ability of the Romans, the defensive policy of Fabius, and the constraints of the political enemies in his own country, gradually lost his advantage. After his brother Hasdrubal's attempt to join forces on an expedition failed, he was forced to return to his homeland. In the end, Rome won a victory in the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. The war ended 4 years later. Carthage was unable to recover from then on, and Rome was officially crowned the hegemon of the Mediterranean and began an era of full-scale expansion. Waving the sword like a floating cloud, all the lords returned. In the Second Macedonian War from 200 BC to 197 BC, it defeated Macedonia. In the Syrian War from 190 to BC to 188 BC, it defeated the Seleucid Empire. In the following decades, Rome, through the Third and Fourth Macedonian Wars, the Third Punic War, and the Viry-at-Hic War, expanded its territory in various parts of the Mediterranean. The position is like a dome, rising with the wind and scattering salt. North Africa is almost comparable. Rome won a series of military victories, but behind the glory, there were also huge hidden crises. The continuous victory of the Roman Republic in foreign wars not only brought wealth, but also brought the problems of widening the gap between the rich and the poor, land annexation, disputes over citizenship, and insufficient citizen soldiers. Resistance in various places became more and more intense. If I can get revenge in another year, the blood will die, the mouth of the Tiber River. In just a few decades, the Sicilian slave uprisings, the Social War, and the Spartacus uprising and other struggles against Roman tyranny broke out. To deal with the crisis, a group of courageous reformers emerged in Rome. They used their own ways to adjust the superstructure of the Republic, such as the Gracchi brothers, reformed from 133 BC to 121 BC, the Marian reforms of 107 BC, and the dictatorship of Sulla in the 82nd BC. These reforms, although they alleviated the crisis of the Republic to a certain extent, also laid the groundwork for the demise of the Republican, the transformation to an imperial system. The last few decades of the Republic can be called the era of heroes in Rome. A series of well-known names appeared on the stage of history. In 60 BC, Crassus, Pompey, and Caesar formed the famous First Triumvirate. They cooperated to control the political situation in Rome. Pompey defeated the Pontic forces in the east and cleared the Mediterranean pirates. Caesar, on the other hand, was stationed in the northern provinces. In the 9 years from 58 BC to 49 BC, through a series of military and diplomatic means, he conquered the entire of Gaul. But Crassus, who was guarding the east, underestimated the enemy and advanced rashly. launching an eastern expedition in a hurry. In 53 BC, he and the Roman army were wiped out by the Parthian army at Carrhae. The triumvirate gradually disintegrated. In 49 BC, Caesar completely broke with Pompey and the noble faction of the Senate behind him. He led his army across the Rubicon River, occupied Rome, and then crossed the Adriatic Sea to advance into Greece. 4 years later, he defeated Pompey in the Battle of Pharsalus, unified Rome, and took Egypt and the Queen of Egypt into his pocket. Caesar carried out a series of reforms to the Roman Republic. Heaven's changes are not to be feared, ancestors. Laws are not to be followed, and people's words are not to be heeded. He paved the way for Rome's transformation to an imperial system, but such reforms offended the Senate and many nobles. In 44 BC, Caesar was assassinated in the Senate. Rome was suddenly plunged into a huge political earthquake. Soon, Caesar's designated heir Octavian returned from Greece and, together with Caesar's old subordinate Antony and Lepidus, formed the Second Triumvirate. In 42 BC, in the Battle of Philippi, they defeated the noble faction army led by Brutus. The three divided Rome. Octavian gradually showed his strong political ability. He first gradually marginalized the weaker Lepidus, and then by maintaining social order and conquering Illyria, he won the praise of the Roman people. In 32 BC, Octavian, on the grounds that Antony had betrayed Roman interests and pleased Egypt, sent troops to attack him, and won a great victory in the subsequent Battle of Actium. Antony fled to Egypt, trying to fight Octavian again, but he was defeated again and finally committed suicide with the Queen of Egypt. Rome took advantage of the victory to annex Egypt. Octavian gradually cleared all the obstacles on his road to power. In 27 BC, he formally accepted the title of Augustus from the Senate. The Roman Republic ended, and the imperial era of the Prince Apate began. The Roman Empire in a broad sense began in 27 BC and lasted until 1453 AD. In historical research, for convenience, this period is divided into several dynasties according to the ruling family. The first dynasty of the Roman Empire, the Julio-Claudian dynasty, was founded by Augustus. The Roman Empire in the Augustan era was politically clear, economically prosperous, and continued to expand. It conquered the entire of Hispania, Illyria, and the vast land between the Rhine and the Elbe. But in 9 AD, the Roman legions, suppressing the Germanic uprising work, completely annihilated in the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest. The border of the Roman Empire retreated to the Rhine. In 14 AD, Octavian died. His adopted son Tiberius succeeded to the throne. His personality was strict and difficult to approach. Although he had some achievements in economy during his reign, he was not popular with the people because of his stingy spending, and his relationship with the Senate was tense. In his later years, he chose to retire to an island and control the political situation remotely. During his rule, factional struggles were serious. In 37 AD, Tiberius died. The nephew of Octavian with a good reputation, the son of the fierce general Germanicus, Caligula, succeeded to the throne, but he quickly turned to tyranny. In 41 AD, the Praetorian Guard assassinated Caligula and then elected Claudius as emperor. Claudius did his best to maintain stability, bridge the relationship between the emperor and the Senate, and at the same time sent troops to conquer most of Thrace and Britain, and initially established the Roman bureaucracy. In 54 AD, Claudius died mysteriously. His adopted son Nero succeeded to the throne. Nero was a famous tyrant in the history of the empire. He acted cruelly and even killed his mother, causing widespread dissatisfaction among the people. In 68 AD, uprisings broke out everywhere. Nero was helpless. He soon fled the capital and chose to commit suicide. The first dynasty ended, The governor of the province of Hispania, Galba, declared himself emperor and was recognized by the Senate, but his actions failed to convince the public. He was soon killed by his subordinate Otho. The governor of Germania, Vitellius, upon hearing this, rebelled and defeated Otho, declaring himself emperor. Who knew that while the mantis stalks the cicada, the oriole is behind? Vespasian in the east did not obey his rule. In 16 AD, he led his army west and won the final victory, establishing the Flavian dynasty and ending the chaotic year of the four emperors. Vespasian ruled diligently during his reign, reforming internal affairs, restoring the economy, and at the same time improving the imperial principate system, and successfully suppressed the Jewish uprising. In 79 AD, his son Titus succeeded to the throne, but he successively encountered the eruption of Mount Vesuvius and the fire and plague of the city of Rome. He was exhausted and died after only 2 years. In 81 AD, Titus's brother Domitian succeeded to the throne. During his reign, he restored the city of Rome, which had been damaged by natural disasters, and also led the use of troops in the regions of Britain and Dacia. But he was regarded by the Senate as an autocratic tyrant and died of assassination. In 96 AD, the Flavian dynasty ended. The court of the early Roman Empire was full of blood and conspiracy. It was not until the 2nd century of the founding of the country that it finally entered its golden age. The Senate elected the master of balancing, the senator Nerva, as emperor. He and his successors together created the era of the 5 good emperors of the Antonine dynasty. Nerva balanced the interests of all parties well and stabilized the political situation of the empire. In 98 AD, the army leader Trajan succeeded to the throne. He not only had great achievements in internal affairs, but also restarted for an expansion. He annexed the Nabatean kingdom of Arabia and conquered Dacia between 101 and 105 AD. From 114 to 116 AD, through the Parthian War, he temporarily incorporated Armenia and Mesopotamia into the Roman map as provinces. But the war chariot of the empire stopped with his death. In 117 AD, Hadrian inherited the throne. He stopped the policy of foreign expansion and made a treaty with Parthia. He built Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain and suppressed the second large-scale uprising of the Jews. In 138 AD, Antoninus inherited the throne. The empire reached its historical peak in his hands. The economy was prosperous, culture was flourishing, and all provinces were developing vigorously, a scene of all things flourishing. Of course, the empire in its golden age still had wine and meat trotting in the vermilion gates, while the bones of the frozen lie on the road. Behind the prosperity, there were hidden crises. With the end of the Roman Empire's foreign wars, the development of the imperial economy gradually lost its driving force. The extra income brought by the periodic plunder of war also dried up. The financial situation of the Roman Empire gradually became tense. The historical cycle of prosperity and decline also arrived as scheduled. In 161 AD, Antoninus died. Marcus Aurelius and Verus served as emperors at the same time. This was also the first appearance of Comminus emperors. Verus was a name in the east. The Eastern Expeditionary Army once again defeated Parthia. But this also marked the end of the Pax Romana. The Antonine plague that returned with the army also severely damaged the Roman Empire. The empire in the later years of Aurelius's rule fell into chaos. This philosopher minus emperor was also forced to go on an expedition himself, deeply mired in the Marcomannic and Quadi wars. He did not achieve final victory until his death. In 180 AD, Aurelius died on the front line. After his son Commodus succeeded to the throne, he gave up the fruits of years of war and returned to Rome with his army. Commodus's ability was insufficient. Faced with the increasingly serious imperial crisis, he had no solution. He was also very slack in internal governance. He finally died in a conspiracy in 192 AD. The Antonine dynasty ended. The Roman central government, which had been running smoothly for 100 years, suddenly changed. The Roman senator Pertinax was elected emperor by the Praetorian Guard, but his restrictions on the army caused dissatisfaction. In the end, he was killed by the Praetorian Guard after reigning for only 3 months. The peninsula is full of love. The imperial capital is full of cities. Rome has been prosperous since ancient times. The Praetorian Guard is loyal, and the head of state is changed. Who will the throne fall to? To maximize their interests, the Praetorian Guard actually held a public auction for the throne. In the end, the wealthy senator Julius ascended the throne, but such a comical way of succession could not be recognized. The governor of Illyria, Septimus Severus, the general of Britain Albinus, and the general of Syria, Niger, rebelled. In the end, Severus defeated the other 3 forces and established the Severan dynasty, ending the year of the 5 emperors. Severus was a typical soldier minus emperor. His performance in internal affairs was mediocre. During his reign, he once again defeated Parthia in the east and established a stronghold in the heart of the Arabian desert. To the south, he briefly occupied the Garamantian kingdom in Libya. He also continued to fight in Britain. He finally died on the British front. In 211 AD, his son Antonius, nicknamed Caracalla, and another son, Geta, succeeded to the throne at the same time. But Caracalla soon murdered his brother Geta. He issued the Constitutio Antoniana, granting Roman citizenship to almost all free people in the country. This act has been praised and criticized in history. His rule was indeed unpopular. In 217 AD, he was assassinated on the front line against Parthia. His successor, Macarianus, could not defeat Parthia and was forced to sue for peace with money. In 218 AD, Elagabalus of the Severan family rebelled and defeated the less legitimate Macarianus, but he acted frivolously and licentiously and died in a riot of the Roman citizens in 222 AD. His distant relative, Severus Alexander, inherited the throne. Alexander was a rare wise ruler, but he was overly dependent on his mother, Mama Ie, and could not separate family affection from power and justice. In 224 AD, the Sasanian dynasty in the east gradually replaced the Parthian Empire. Alexander launched an eastern expedition in 230 AD, but due to his mother's obstruction and various other factors, he returned without success. In 235 AD, Alexander launched a northern expedition against the Alemanni. The army, dissatisfied with his mother's control, launched a mutiny and killed Alexander. The Severan dynasty ended. The 3rd century crisis began. From 235 AD until Diocletian's unification in 285 AD. In just half a century, the Roman Empire changed more than 20 emperors. Most of them died in unnatural death. This era of political chaos and economic crisis of oligarchy is called the 3rd century crisis. In 235 AD, the army leader Maximin, a skilled Alexandrian, seized the throne, but his cruel rule aroused rebellion. The Gordian father and son in Africa raised an army of righteousness. The Senate then followed up. Who knew that the uprising father and son in Africa's career was cut short in the middle? The Senate had to elect Pupienus and Albinus to resist Maximinus. The latter was assassinated while besieging Aquileia. The Senate won a victory, but the 2 emperors were soon killed by the Praetorian Guard in the street. The Praetorian Guard then supported Gordian's young and intelligent grandson, Gordian II, as emperor. but his power was controlled by the army. In 242 AD, he personally led an expedition to attack Persia. He achieved results in the initial stage, but died mysteriously on the front line. The general Philip seized the throne and stopped the advance. In 248 AD, the Roman civilization, in crisis, welcomed the 1000th anniversary of its founding. Philip presided over a grand celebration. But just the following year, the Mosia and General Decius rebelled. Philip died on the front line. Decius's fate was even more tragic. In 250 AD, the empire's nemesis, the Goths, invaded for the first time. Decius led his army to resist but died in the Battle of Abydos, becoming the first Roman emperor to die at the hands of the barbarians. His successor, Gallus, was forced to pay tribute and sue for peace. The dissatisfied border general Aemilia, NUS, led his army to defeat the Goths, intercepted the tribute, and then marched on Rome in victory. Gallus was defeated and killed, but just as if they were lining up to receive the throne, Valerian of Gaul, on the grounds of avenging Gallus, killed Aemilia NUS. To face the threats from all sides, Valerian appointed his son Gallienus to rule the Western Empire, becoming the source of the empire's division. In 260 AD, Valerian, facing the Sasanian-Persian invasion, chose to attack personally but was surrounded at Edessa, becoming the first Roman emperor to be captured. Gallienus was caught off guard. Since ancient times, parting has been sad, let alone the old dog losing his integrity in his later years. Valerian's capture triggered a series of chain reactions. Gaul in the west and Palmyra in the east successively declared their independence. The empire entered a three-kingdoms era. Dozens of claimants in various places rebelled one after another. The 3rd century crisis reached its highest climax. Gallienus struggled to hold on, defeating all the rebellions except for Gaul and Palmyra, but was ultimately killed by his subordinate. His subordinate, Claudius II, was elected emperor. He suppressed rebellions, recovered Hispania, and defeated the Gothic invasion, opening the prelude to the empire's counterattack. In 270 AD, Claudius died of illness. The Heaven Minos sent hero Aurelian defeated Claudius's brother Quintilian inherited the throne. He first defeated the Goths and the Alemanni, then, through 2 years of campaigning in the east, defeated the Palmyran Aqueans Zenobia, and in 274 eliminated the Gallic Empire, reunifying Rome. He was called the Restorer of the World. In 275 AD, Aurelian was assassinated in Thrace. His successors were also outstanding. Tacitus defeated the Alans. Probus constantly defeated the barbarians and restored the economy, but died in a soldier's riot while promoting the army's large scale production movement. In 283 AD, Carus led an army on an eastern expedition and once again captured Kasica. But he was struck by lightning and died mysteriously on the front line. His second son, Numerian, also died mysteriously on the way back. In 280 for AD, the emperor's guard commander, Diocletian, seized the opportunity and was elected emperor. 4 years later, he returned with his army and defeated Carus's eldest son, Carinus, reunifying the empire. The 3rd century crisis came to an end. Diocletian, after completing the unification, added the title of Dominus to himself. This move symbolized the end of the Principate era and the beginning of the Dominate era. He also implemented a system of 4 emperors ruling together in the empire. The east and west of the empire each had a senior emperor and a junior emperor. The emperors cooperated with all their strength, each performing their duties. They suppressed the Baghdad rebellion, recovered the rebellious Britain, suppressed rebellions in various places, defeated the northern barbarians, and won a great victory in the war with Persia. the Roman Empire welcomed a rare period of peace. But from 305 AD, Diocletian and Maximian voluntarily abdicated. Constantius Chlorus and Galerius succeeded as the senior emperors of the East and West. Just 1 year later, chaos came again. The two junior emperors appointed by Galerius, Maximinus and Severus II, were mediocre and could not convince the public. In 306 AD, Constantius died in Britain. His eldest son, Constantine, was elected to succeed him by the army. Maxentius, the son of Maximian, also rebelled in Rome, killing the legitimate emperor Severus II. Galerius personally led an expedition, but failed to achieve results. Even with the mediation of Diocletian, it was of no avail. In 311 AD, Galerius died. Maximinus and Licinius divided his land. The following year, Constantine went south to Italy and, in the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, killed Maxentius and unified the Western Empire. Licinius also defeated Maximinus in 313 AD. During this period, Constantine and Licinius jointly issued the Edict of Milan in Milan. This represented that the Roman Empire's policy towards Christianity gradually relaxed its control, changing from a combination of tolerance and persecution to protection and utilization. Christianity gradually merged with the imperial government. Constantine and Licinius then broke out into civil wars. Constantine took the lead, with iron horses and golden spears, swallowing thousands of miles like a tiger. He finally defeated Licinius in 324 AD and reunified the empire. The Roman Empire in the Constantinian era underwent great changes. Christianity obtained the official recognition of the empire. Roman polytheism was gradually marginalized. The deification of the monarch, which began in the Diocletian era, was further established through the help of Christianity, making the supreme status of the monarch even more established. The imperial capital was also moved from the city of Rome to New Rome, that is, Constantinople. In 337 AD, Constantine died. The empire, after a bloody struggle, was divided among his three sons. From west to east, they were Constantine II, Constans I, and Constantius II. Constantine II, dissatisfied with his ruling territory, sent troops to Italy in 340 AD but was defeated by Constans. Constans obtained the western territory, but his rule was also mediocre. In 350 AD, he was assassinated by his subordinate Magni Antiochus. Constantius II in the east, on the grounds of avenging his brother, led his army west. He won a victory in the Battle of Marseilles and reunified the empire in 353 AD. Constantius's governing ability was higher than his two brothers, but the eunuchs were in power, and factional divisions were serious. Constantius sent his cousin Gallus to govern Gaul, but soon after executed him. The emperors of the Constantinian dynasty almost achieved the feat of self-extermination. At this time, Constantius Chlorus, I was only left with one male descendant, Julian. Julian was a staunch polytheistic believer. His governance in the Western Empire was quite effective. In 361 AD, Constantius II died. Julian, as the only male member, inherited the throne. He then launched the last large-scale persecution of Christians in the empire and was called the apostate. In 363 AD, Julian sent troops on an eastern expedition against the Sasanians. He won first and then lost. He died before his expedition was completed, and his ambition was not fulfilled. The Constantinian dynasty ended. Jovian, who won by name, succeeded to the throne on the front line. He was forced to sign an unfavorable treaty with Persia. He also died on the way back with his army. Then the general Valentinian was elected emperor. The Valentinian dynasty began. Valentinian appointed his brother Valens to rule the east. In 375 AD, Valentinian died on the front line. His sons Gratian and Valentinian I jointly divided the Western Empire. Then the invasion of the northern barbarians became more and more intense. In 378 AD, Valens, facing the migration of the Goths into the empire, was determined to take the initiative to attack. But he did not wait for Gratian's reinforcements and fought the Goths. He was disastrously defeated and died in the Battle of Adrianople. This battle basically announced the failure of the traditional Roman heavy infantry tactics and also heralded the collapse of the Roman Empire's front line. The eastern general Theodosius took over the mess. In 383 AD, the British general Magnus Maximus rebelled. Gratian was defeated and killed. In 387, Maximus invaded Italy. Theodosius supported Valentinian. Ion defeated Maximus the following year. But Valentinian I was still a puppet. In 392, he died at the hands of his general. Eugenius was elected emperor. Theodosius I, for the second time, won a victory in the Battle of the Frigidus in 394 and reunified the Roman Empire for the last time. During his reign, Theodosius completely negated the ancient Roman polytheistic faith. The state religion status of Christianity was completely established at this point. In 395 AD, the Roman Empire, which planned for Europe, Asia, and Africa, was divided into East and West for the last time. Theodosius I, who had unified the empire for less than a year, died. He divided the empire between his two sons Arcadius and Honorius. The Eastern Empire inherited by Arcadius was habitually called the Eastern Roman Empire. The Western Empire inherited by Honorius was habitually called the Western Roman Empire. In this video, let's continue to tell the 1000-year history of the late Roman civilization. The Western Empire, after the complete division, began to gradually disintegrate. In 408 AD, after executing the meritorious regent general Stilicho, Honorius, who was stationed in Ravenna, did something. The migrating Visigoths sacked Rome. The various regions of the empire also had rebellions against Honorius. The usurper from Britain, Constantine III, with the British garrison, seized the Gallic region. The Eastern Emperor Arcadius also died at this time. The young Theodosius I succeeded to the throne. He was successively regent by the old anthem, by us and his elder sister Pulcher IA. The Eastern Empire, in the subsequent great invasion of the barbarians, although also devastated, relying on the taxes of the land higher than the East and the city walls of Constantinople, was able to survive firmly. In contrast, the Western Empire was not so lucky. Although under the rule of Constantine III, the Ravenna regime defeated the usurper and recovered Gaul and North Africa. For Britain, whose garrison had been completely moved away, it could only let it fend for itself. For the Suebi, Vandals, and Alan tribes who were still entrenched in the province of Galatia in Hispania, there were few countermeasures. The Visigothic tribe continued to develop uncontrollably. With the acquiescence of the Ravenna side, in 419 AD, they established the Visigothic kingdom with Toulouse as its center in the Aquitaine region. In 421 AD, Constantius II died. 2 years later, Honorius died. The throne of the Western Empire was usurped by the minister John, the 6-year-old Valentinian III, with the support of Theodosius II, regained the throne. At this time, the Franks, Burgundians, and Alemanni in the north entered the imperial territory like a tide. The Roman general Aetius, in 437 AD, eliminated the Burgundian kingdom and then defeated the Visigoths. But in 439, the Vandals occupied the North African region by sea. The Western Empire was attacked from both the front and back. In 450 AD, Theodosius II fell from his horse and died in Constantinople. The Empress Pulcher II and Marcian formed a formal marriage. Then Marcian claimed the throne, thus maintaining a smooth transition of power. In 451, Aetius, together with the Visigoths and other tribes, defeated the Hun leader Attila at Chalons. But this did not change the decline of the Western Empire. Before the barbarians came, the Romans were fighting internally. After the barbarians came, the Romans were still fighting internally. So didn't the barbarians come for nothing? 3 years later, Valentinian II executed Aetius. 4 years later, he was killed by Aetius's supporters. The rumor minus spreader Petronius claimed the throne, but he was soon killed by the angry subjects because he was unable to resist the Vandals' sack of Rome. Avitus from Gaul took the opportunity to claim the throne, but he also failed to sit firmly on the throne. The generals Majorian and Drake soon defeated him. Majorian succeeded as emperor, opening the last revival of the Western Empire. He not only led his army to defeat the Vandals, but also went north to defeat the Visigoths and Burgundians, regaining control of Hispania and Gaul. The Western Empire for a time showed signs of revival again. However, there are unforeseen circumstances in the sky. Majorian's plan for a war against the Vandals came to nothing because the enemy's sneak attack destroyed the ships. He himself was also murdered by Rick Eimer shortly after. Rick Eimer, in turn, controlled a series of puppet emperors, such as Libius Severus, and Thamia sent by the Eastern Empire, and Olyberius. In 457 AD, Marcian died. The Theodosian dynasty was extinct. The council Aspar supported Leo to be crowned emperor. This was the first time a coronation ceremony appeared. The Leonian dynasty began. He supported Anthemius to rule the West. In 467 AD, launched a joint military operation to attack the Vandal kingdom in North Africa. But under a series of wrong decisions by the general Basil Isias, it ended in failure. The Western Roman Empire lost its last chance of revival. After Ricimer's death, the Burgundian king supported Gl. Vicerius as emperor. But because he was not recognized by the Eastern Roman Empire, he was soon deposed. In 474 AD, Leo I supported his relative Nepos as emperor. He was defeated by Orestes in 475 and fled to Dalmatia. Orestes supported his own son, Romulus, as emperor. This is the recognized last emperor of the Western Empire, Romulus Augustulus. A Romulus began it, a Romulus ended it. In 476 AD, Odoacer conquered Italy, deposed Romulus, called himself king of Italy, and sent the imperial regalia to Constantinople, marking the end of the Ravenna regime. This year is also the more recognized beginning of the European Middle Ages. The fall of the Western empires certainly did not mean the fall of Rome. The Eastern Empire still controlled half of the country. Leo I died in 474 AD. His grandson Leo I succeeded to the throne. He also died young soon after. Zeno, the son minus law of Leo I, inherited the throne. The commander who had led the expedition against the Vandals, Basil Isias, launched a rebellion and seized the throne. Zeno was forced to flee. 20 months later, he returned to Constantinople and was restored to the throne. The Eastern Empire sat and watched the collapse of the West in internal strife. The remaining Roman forces in the West then gradually withdrew from the stage of history. Nepos was defeated and died in 480 AD. The kingdom of Soissons in Gaul was also conquered in 486. Pisan dressed for 10,000 li of rivers and mountains. Today, Dacia is on the border defense. During Zeno's rule, he completely sent the Goths out of the territory of the Eastern Empire. the Ostrogothic king Theodoric conquered Italy and the Visigoths in the name of the empire, creating a short-lived Western Empire. In 491, Zeno died. Anastasius I married his empress Ariadne and succeeded to the throne. Anastasius I was known for his financial management. He abolished the notorious gold and silver tax and replaced it with a gold tax. This is commonly known as changing the soup without changing the medicine. But through this move, he won the hearts of the people. In the more than 20 years of his reign, he rested with the people, laying the foundation for the revival of the Eastern Empire and the reconquest of the Justinian dynasty. In 518 AD, Anastasius I died. The commander of the guard, Justinian, succeeded to the throne, creating the Justinian dynasty. Justinian, after his uncle Justin succeeded to the throne, assisted him in his rule and officially succeeded to the throne in 527, after passing through the turmoil of the early succession. Especially after the Nika riots, he began the revival of the Eastern Empire. Justinian ruled diligently internally, carried out administrative reforms, reorganized the provinces, presided over the compilation of the Justinian Code, and rebuilt the Hagia Sophia. He reformed the tax system and actively opened up new Red Sea trade routes, trying to get rid of the Persian control over the empire's industry and commerce. Externally, he appointed Belisarius as a general, dealing with the constant harassment of the Sasanian Persians in the east and recovering the old territory in the west. In 534, he defeated the Vandals and recovered North Africa and Sicily. Then, he began to recover Italy. But the sudden Great Plague greatly weakened the empire's national strength. The eastern defense line of the empire was in imminent danger. The Italian War in the west also became a protracted war under the influence of the epidemic. Blood flows like a sea on the border. The emperor's ambition to expand the border has not yet ended. In the end, Justinian appointed an Arsacind in 554, defeated the Frankish army and completely recovered Italy. And through a military adventure, he conquered the south of Hispania. But the revival of the empire, with the continuous recurrence of the plague and the death of Justinian, came to an abrupt end. In 565 AD, Justinian died in Constantinople. His nephew Minos-in-Minos-Law, Justinian I, succeeded to the throne. In 568, the Lombards invaded Italy. The Avars and Slavs also constantly harassed the Danube border. The joint expedition against Persia with the Turks also failed. In his later years, Justinian I was a puppet of his empress and adopted son. In 578, Tiberius Constantine succeeded to the throne. He was known for his untimely generosity. During his short reign, he established the barbarian Thode Urati I Legion, the predecessor of the VA and Guard. In 582, Tiberius died. His son Minos-in-Minos-Law Maurice succeeded to the throne. During Maurice's reign, he reorganized Africa and Italy in the west into exarchates. On the main battle lines of the empire, he showed excellent legion command ability. To the east, he intervened in the Sasanian-Persian civil war and obtained Persian territorial concessions in Armenia. To the north, he almost drove all the Avars back across the Danube. However, due to the empire's financial difficulties, Maurice's austerity policy caused widespread dissatisfaction. In 602, Maurice died in a military riot. The empire fell into a state of collapse. The reign of terror Phocas completely shattered the Eastern Empire. Khosrow II, on the pretext of avenging Maurice, provoked a war. The land of the empire was plunged into the flames of war. In 608, the Exarch of Africa, Heraclius and his son, rebelled. In 610, they finally defeated and executed Phocas. The young Heraclius succeeded to the throne, establishing the harem, Cl dynasty. In the early years of Heraclius, he faced the continuous invasion of the Balkan region by nomadic peoples. At the same time, Persia conquered the important tax-based areas of the empire, Syria and Egypt, in one fell swoop, and continued to invade the interior of Asia Minor, a 2-pronged attack. Faced with a critical moment, Heraclius turned the tide and supported the collapsing building. He divided the empire into several military districts, expanded the army, and established the theme system. In 622, he officially attacked, implementing a house-swapping tactic, and was invincible in the rear of Persia. In 626, the Avars, in alliance with the Persians, besieged Constantinople, but failed under the strong city defenses. Heraclius then continued to counterattack. After several great victories, in 628, he led his army to burn the lower capital of Persia and approached Kassitsan. At this time, the Persians had an internal strife. Khosrow II's son, Kavadi H, overthrew and killed his father and sued for peace with Heraclius. The Roman Empire was able to recover all its eastern territories and retrieve the true cross that had been taken by the Persians. But what no one expected was that the Arabs in the southern desert had just experienced an unprecedented integration by Muhammad. In 632, they established a unified state. In addition, with the unprecedented cohesion of the new religion, the Arab Empire began its expansion. And Persia and Rome had just experienced a great war and their vitality was greatly damaged. As the saying goes, when the snipe and the clam grapple, the fisherman profits. The Arab conquest directly through the 1,000-year long struggle between the Greco-Roman Mediterranean world and the Persian Near East into the wastebasket. The Sasanian Persia was directly wiped out. The Eastern Roman Empire also suffered heavy losses. After the disastrous defeat at the Battle of Yarmouk, the Arabs conquered Syria, the Levant, and the Egyptian region. The refugees were displaced in the flames of war. The brocade of the homeland cannot be seen. The wives and children of the foreign land must be abandoned. Heraclius was unable to recover. His later rule was extremely chaotic. He died of illness in 641. His son Constantine II succeeded to the throne and died mysteriously soon after. The angry citizens of Constantinople overthrew her Alon, as and his mother Martina, and supported the son of Constantine II, Constans. Constans II tried to recover the old territory, but had the heart to recover, but not the strength. He suffered a disastrous defeat at Alexandria. After that, in the Battle of the Masts in 655, he was in danger of being completely annihilated, but he successfully blocked the Arab steppes in Asia Minor. Constans was the last Roman emperor to have visited the city of Rome. In his later years of rule, he had a sudden whim moved the capital to Syracuse in Sicily. He was assassinated there in 668. His son Constantine IV succeeded to the throne. He successfully defeated Muawiyah in the siege of Constantinople in 678, forcing the other side to cede territory and pay tribute, saving the Western Christian world from danger. In 685, Constantine IV died. His son Justinian II succeeded to the throne. The new emperor, who had great ambitions, did not have the ability to match his ambitions. Although he defeated the Slavic tribes and promoted the Christianization of the Slavs, he was overthrown by Leontios in 695 and went into exile in the Crimea. The empire fell into a 20-year period of chaos. In 698, Tiberius I overthrew Leontios, but also saw the complete fall of Carthage and the North African territory. In 705, Justinian II, with the support of the Khazar Khan, was restored to the throne. His second term was also not successful. He was finally killed by Philippicus. The three emperors after his death all had a term of only 2 years. The internal strife of Rome gave the Arabs an excellent opportunity. In 716, the Arabs entered the Anatolian Sea theme. The theme leader, Leo, gave the Arabs a promise of benefits in exchange for support. He entered Constantinople in 717. Theodosius I abdicated. The Isaurian dynasty began. The beginning of the Isaurian dynasty was the extremely critical defense of the capital. In 717, shortly after Leo II entered the capital, the Arabs advanced by land and water. The third siege of Constantinople broke out. Leo II was appointed in the midst of a defeated army and was ordered in a time of crisis. He gained a naval advantage through Greek hire and also received aid from the Bulgarian Khanate on land. The Arab siege ultimately failed completely. Leo II can be called one of the greatest emperors after Heraclius. But in his later years of rule, the iconoclast faction from Asia Minor gradually gained a dominant position. History also takes the later years of Leo II's rule as the beginning of the iconoclast movement. Leo constantly fought with the Arabs, and with the decline of the Umayyads, he gradually achieved results. In 741, Constantine V succeeded to the throne, although in the following year, he was betrayed by his brother Minos. In Minos' law, Artabas II lost the throne for a year. He took advantage of the chaos of the Arab dynasty to recover some lost territory and had outstanding achievements in the battle against the Bulgarian Khanate. The iconoclast movement intensified during his tenure. The political and religious conflicts of the empire weakened the empire's national strength. The city of Rome also turned to the Frankish Empire in 754, losing direct jurisdiction over the land of one time. The king's army will one day pacify Rome in the west. Do not forget to tell your ancestors at the family sacrifice. In 775, Leo IV succeeded to the throne. He suffered from a serious illness, and his attacks on the Arabs and Bulgarians were also ineffective. In 780, his only son, Constantine VI, succeeded to the throne, but the power was in the hands of his mother Irene. In 797, the power Minos hungry Irene overthrew her own son and became the first sole Minos ruling empress in the history of the Roman Empire. It was also during her reign that Charlemagne of the Western Carolingian Empire claimed the Western throne and even proposed marriage to her. However, as soon as the envoy arrived at Constantinople, Irene was overthrown by her subjects. The Isaurian dynasty ended. The imperial finance minister, Nike P, or OSI, was elected emperor. He successfully rectified the imperial finances and insisted on fighting the Bulgarians in the north, but was ambushed and killed in the Battle of Pliska. It is said that after his death, his skull was made into a wine cup. His heir, Street Orake, IOS, was also seriously injured and died shortly after returning to the capital. The throne was inherited by his brother Minos in Minos' law, Michael I. Michael led his army to battle, but was betrayed by the Anatolian Sea general Leo and was defeated. Leo V seized the throne. He sat and watched the enemy plunder, causing the suburbs of Constantinople to be severely damaged. During Leo V's reign, he once again launched a climax of iconoclasm. In 820, the officer Michael launched a coup and assassinated Leo. The Amori and dynasty was established. Michael I successfully ended the internal strife of the empire, but could not stop the Arabs from invading Cretan Sicily. In 829, Theophilos succeeded to the throne. During his reign, he was still more defeated than victorious against the Arabs. He was the last Roman emperor to support iconoclasm. In 842, Theophilos's to Minos' old son, Michael II, succeeded to the throne. The power was in the hands of his mother, Theodora. In 856, Michael I came of age. The iconoclast movement came to an end during this period. With the assistance of his uncle Bardas, Michael repeatedly defeated the Arab invasions, but he was killed by his close favorite, Basil. The Amori dynasty ended. The Macedonian dynasty began. The second golden age of the Eastern Roman Empire kicked off. Basil's early life was in the Macedonian region. His rise to power was legendary, but he, who had been an illiterate commoner for the first half of his life, showed amazing talent after succeeding to the throne. During his reign, he suppressed rebellions, strengthened the Asia Minor defense line, and recovered a large amount of land in southern Italy. In 800 Ixus, Basil died in a hunting accident. His son, Leo VI, succeeded to the throne. Leo was known as the Wise for his profound knowledge, but was repeatedly ridiculed for his marriages. His military talent was mediocre, and he was repeatedly defeated by the Bulgarians and the Arabs. In 912, he tried to recover Crete, but failed and died of depression. His brother Alexander succeeded to the throne. The following year, Alexander died. Leo's son, born in the purple, Constantine VII, succeeded to the throne. However, in 920, Romanos Epanos from Armenia, through a series of means, married his daughter to Constantine VI and was then crowned co-emperor, monopolizing power. He successfully negotiated peace with the Bulgarians and Slavs and defeated the Arabs in the east. Romanos once intended to completely divide the power, appointing his 3 sons as co-emperors. For a time, there was an absurd scene of 5 emperors ruling together. However, after the death of his talented eldest son, Christopher, he gradually leaned towards returning to the right path, and therefore, in 944, he was overthrown by his other 2 good sons. With the support of the citizens, Constantine VI took the opportunity to regain power and began to rule personally. He, like his father, was a scholar minus emperor. He confirmed many of the policies left by his predecessor to restrict the great nobles and protect the life of the Theme soldiers. The vitality of the empire was further restored. At the same time, the military upstarts represented by the PHOK as family began to emerge on the Eastern Front, which was a prelude to the large scale reconquest that followed. In 959, Constantine's only son, Romanos II, succeeded to the throne. He married the Apano, the daughter of an innkeeper. He then sent the general Nike PH/OS on an expedition to Crete and Aleppo. Nike PH/OS's army was invincible on the front line and was given the nickname, the White Death of the Saracens. In 963, Romanos I died mysteriously in Constantinople. His sons, Basil and Constantine, were crowned co-emperors before his death, but because they were too young to convince the public, at the request of the Empress Dowager the Apano, he led his army back to Constantinople, defeated the opposition's great eunuch Joseph Branias, and was formally crowned emperor. He then recovered the entire of Cilicia and took Cyprus, which had been jointly managed by Rome and the Arabs, for himself, and further recovered Antioch, the Arab emirate that had been defeated and looted by him, before became a vassal of the empire around the same time. But his coldness and dullness made the empress the Apano and many people dislike him. In the end, in 960, he died in a conspiracy between his nephew John Ts and his Kes and the Apano. During his reign, John defeated the large army of the Rus, recovered eastern Bulgaria, and forced the Bulgarians to become a vassal. He then, in 975, launched an expedition to Syria, recovering a large amount of land, and even once approached Jerusalem. The purple robe and feathered dispatches fly to the Dead Sea. The Sultan's fierce fire illuminates the Wolf Mountain, but he suddenly fell ill and died of illness the following year. In 976, Romanos's eldest son, Basil I, finally grasped power. Although his childhood was restricted and threatened, he was poor but strong and did not lose his ambition. In his early years of rule, he defeated domestic rebellions and constantly cracked down on his competitors. By 989, he finally completely grasped the power in his own hands and thus promulgated a law that was even stricter than that of Romanos I, implementing a system of joint liability. At the end of the 10th century, Bulgaria and the empire were in a long period of war. Under the leadership of Xerxes, it once captured a large amount of the empire's Balkan territory. It was also during the period of fierce fighting that the Grand Prince of Kievan Rus, Vladimir, married into the imperial family and announced his conversion to orthodoxy. The dispute between the empire and the Rus came to an end. Basil I finally let go of his hands. Old but strong, he would rather move his white head's heart. He attacked on all four sides. In 1018, he conquered Bulgaria. The Dalmatian region also returned to the empire's sphere of influence. In the east, he defeated Georgia and Armenia, resisted the Fatimid dynasty in the south, and settled southern Italy in the west. It can be said that he was victorious on all four sides, and the world submitted to him. In 1025, Basil I died on the eve of his expedition to Sicily. His departure marked the beginning of the empire's downward path. In 1025, because Basil had no children, his brother Constantine VII succeeded to the throne. Constantine VII had no experience in governance and did not allow his daughters to marry. This led to serious succession problems later. In 1028, Romanos I married Empress Zoe and inherited the throne. But his rule favored the interests of the great nobles, and the situation of the theme soldiers became increasingly difficult. He himself was not good at fighting, but his good use of generals still allowed him to hold on to the country's territory, and even recovered Edessa in 1032. In 1034, Romanos died. Zoe's lover, Michael IV, succeeded to the throne. Michael's efforts to recover Sicily came to nothing in internal strife. He himself also died of depression in 1041. His nephew, Michael V, succeeded to the throne, but he was unpopular and was overthrown by the citizens of Constantinople. Empress Zoe was forced to come to the forefront with her sister Theodora and remarried Constantine IX. During the reign of Constantine IX, the famous Great Schism of the Eastern and Western churches occurred. The Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church have not been in contact with each other since then, laying the groundwork for the evil consequences of the later Fourth Crusade. Constantine IX, faced with the church split, did his best to try to bridge the conflict, but died shortly after. The Empress Theodora, who was over 70 years old, was in high spirits and skilled in governance. However, she died only a year later. She was unmarried all her life and left no heir. The Macedonian dynasty ended. The imperial dignitary Michael I was elected emperor, but he did not handle the relationship with the military nobles well and was finally overthrown by the general Isaac K. Omenes in 1057. Isaac tried to implement reforms, but his health deteriorated rapidly in 1059 under the pressure of other nobles. He voluntarily gave up the throne to Constantine X. The Doukas dynasty began. Constantine X's ability was insufficient, but his measure of cutting military spending greatly damaged the combat effectiveness of the imperial army. After Constantine's death in 1068, the general Romanos married the empress and seized the throne. Romanos IV tried to recover the lost land of Armenia, but was betrayed by his subordinates at Manzi Kert. The disaster of the empire's disastrous defeat at Manzi Kert was thus brewed. My army drives away the dust of the world. Day and night I hope for its peace. The rebellion of the thieves is unpredictable. The returning army's heart is scattered. The son of Constantine X, Michael VII, succeeded to the throne after the defeat, but he arbitrarily destroyed the treaty established by his predecessor. When the Seljuks really invaded, he had no skills, quite the style of an armchair strategist. The empire's territory in Asia Minor was lost at an astonishing speed. A frenzy of rebellion also swept through the empire. In the end, in 1078, Michael was overthrown by Nike PH or Osiii. The domestic rebellion in the empire was constant, and the territory of Asia Minor was almost completely lost. In a time of crisis, the Komnenos family, which had been silent for 20 years, Ray-Minus emerged. Alexios seized the throne in 1081. The Komnenos dynasty began. Alexios I took over an empire that was riddled with holes and full of crises. In 1081, Alexios resisted the invasion of the Normans in the west, was repeatedly defeated but fought on, and finally drove the invaders out of the imperial territory. In 1085, in 1090, the Pechenegs in the north and the Turkish pirates in the south jointly blockaded Constantinople. Alexios, in 1091, made a desperate move and annihilated the Pechenegs in the Battle of Level Union, successfully pulling the empire back from the brink of death. In 1096, the Pope organized the First Crusade. Alexios took the opportunity to recover the coast areas of Asia Minor. The establishment of the Crusader states also provided a buffer zone for the empire against the Turks. The empire gradually walked out of the crisis since the Battle of Manzi Kert regained its status as a great power. In 1118, Alexios died. John I thwarted the conspiracy of his sister Anna and succeeded to the great government. He first defeated the Hungarian kingdom, which was developing sneakily in the north, and recaptured the important city of Sirmium. Then he further recovered the territory of Asia Minor. He was more victorious than defeated in the battles against the surrounding regimes, but he died in a hunting accident in 1143. His young son Manuel inherited the throne. Manuel was ambitious and attacked on all four sides, frequently using troops in Italy, Egypt, and other places. But he did not obtain any permanent territory. The only thing worthy of praise is that he, by twice defeating Hungary, made the Bosnian region a direct possession. He then supported Bela II to inherit the Hungarian throne. Hungary thus became a vassal of the empire. He still maintained a big stick deterrence against the Crusader states, incorporating them into the empire's sphere of influence. For a time, he was in the limelight, but Manuel's court life was extravagant. He also, after the defeat at the Battle of Myrio, Kep Halong in 1176, was unable to recover. The Komnen restoration gradually came to an end. In 1180, Manuel I died, leaving behind his young son Alexios II. He was soon overthrown by his uncle Andronikos. Andronikos's internal reforms failed, and externally, he attracted the invasion of the Sicilian army. Unable to resist the invasion, Andronikos was killed in a riot in the capital. The Komnenos dynasty ended. Isaac I of the Angelos family was elected emperor. If we say who was the most disastrous dynasty in Roman history, the Angelos would certainly not be outdone. After the collapse of the Komnenos dynasty, the authority of the Angelos royal family was limited to Thrace and Crete. They could not command most parts of the empire. After the Sicilian army retreated, a rebellion broke out in Bulgaria soon after. Isaac I was unable to suppress it. In 1195, Isaac's brother Alexios I launched a coup and seized the throne. Isaac's son, Alexios IV, escaped from the empire. On the occasion of the Fourth Crusade, he asked the Crusaders for help, leading the Crusaders to Constantinople. Alexios I was defeated and fled. Alexios IV, together with his father Isaac II, was restored to the throne. But because he could not pay the promised wealth, Isaac and Alexios IV were killed by the usurper Alexios V. Alexios V also could not resist the Crusaders. Constantinople was finally captured by the Crusaders in 1204. The living are still stealing a living, the dead are long gone. The Roman Empire suffered a tragic blow. The country was broken, but the mountains and rivers remained. The Romans who had lost their capital did not give up resistance. They eventually formed three main exile regimes: the Nicaea, an empire of the Lascaris family, the despotate of Epirus of the Komnenos-Doukas family, and the empire of Trebizond of the Komnenos family. They competed with the Crusader Latin Empire, striving for the great goal of recovering Constantinople. The Latin Empire, in the Battle of Adrianople in 1205, was disastrously defeated by the hands of Bulgaria. Then it was mired in a struggle with the Roman allied regimes. The Empire of Trebizond was the first to be out. After losing Papia-Chelagonia, it retreated into the Pontic Mountains and from then on became a commercial city-state. Epirus, under the rule of the two brothers Michael and Theodore, rose and once approached Constantinople. Theodore also had the Archbishop of Thessaloniki crowning, so there was the called Empire of Thessaloniki. However, just one step away from Constantinople, this successor state was disastrously defeated in a military operation against Bulgaria in 1230 and lost the qualification to recover Constantinople. Nicaea became the final winner. During the reign of Theodore I, with Nicaea as the center, he ruled diligently. The national strength quickly recovered, and in 1211, he had completed the great feat of beheading the Sultan of Rum. His successor, John I, inherited his will. While ensuring that the Asian territory was safe, he recovered a large amount of European land, completing the encirclement of Constantinople. In 1254, John I died. Theodore I succeeded to the throne. During his reign, he continued to compress the living space of the Latin Empire, and the power of Michael of the Palaiologos family also rose rapidly during his reign. And after Theodore's death in 1258, he and his son John IV were emperors. 4 years later, he deposed John IV. In 1261, the Nicaean army recovered Constantinople. The Eastern Roman Empire, after more than 50 years of exile, was successfully restored. Michael V. I established the last dynasty of the empire, the Palaiologos dynasty. During his reign, Michael V. I tried to promote the union of the Eastern and Western churches. He used clever diplomatic means, through actions such as inciting the Sicilian Vespers, to relieve the threat of the Latins to the empire. He was called the 8-clawed spider. But the eastern border of the empire also gradually collapsed during this period. In 1282, Andronikos I succeeded to the throne. The empire was defeated by Serbia and Venice. He tried to use the Catalan Company, but was instead plundered. The Ottomans also established their state in 1299. In the later years of Andronikos I's reign, his relationship with his grandson Andronikos II deteriorated. After the death of his wife, Mykolaios, the War of the Two Andronikoi broke out. He was forced to abdicate in 1328. Andronikos II, who successfully seized the throne, carried out the last large-scale expansion of the empire, eliminating Epirus, which was entrenched on the coast of the Adriatic Sea. But the territory of Asia Minor was completely lost. In 1341, Andronico II died. Before his death, he did not specify an heir. His son John V succeeded to the throne with the support of the Empress Dowager and his imperial bloodline. The Empress Dowager was extremely suspicious of the Prime Minister, John. John, with the support of many supporters, launched a seizure of power. This is known in history as the War of the Two Johns. At this time, the newly conquered Epirus and Thessaly were both captured by the Serbian Empire. At the same time, the Ottoman Bey Orhan, at the request of John VI, entered Europe and quickly began his expansion in the Balkans. It is not an exaggeration to call this leading the wolf into the house. In 1376, there was also the 3-year usurpation of Andronico IV and the usurpation of John VI in 1390. In 1391, John V died. Manuel I succeeded to the throne. He traveled to Western Europe for many years to seek aid, but the most powerful aid came from the east. In 1402, the Ottoman Sultan Bey I was defeated and captured by Timur in the Battle of Ankara. The Roman Empire negotiated with his son Suleiman and recovered Thessaloniki and the Black Sea coast. The emperor's good sons, John and Constantine, also, in the Morea, with only a few strongholds, expanded their territory to almost the entire Peloponnese Peninsula. As became a prosperous economic and cultural capital. No civilization was like the setting sun of Rome. Its eyes, before it died, shone with the brightest light. The Renaissance began here, and the opposing Hesychism developed its influence in the various states of Rus. But the weak empire was destined not to be able to support the cultural revival for long. In 1425, Manuel I died. His son John V I succeeded to the throne. During his reign, John V I tried to seek the aid of the Pope and promoted the union of the Eastern and Western churches, and in 1432, he repelled the Ottoman siege of Constantinople. His brother, Constantine, also forced the Athenian state to become a vassal and pay tribute, but the failure of the Varna Crusade in 44 and the failure of Hungary in the Kosovo War of 1448 basically sentenced the empire to death. In 1448, John V I died. His brother Constantine I succeeded to the throne. Faced with an empire with no troops inside and no aid outside, Constantine had no other choice but to hold on. Faced with the Han Dq, Yuan the Orban cannon, the faltering Roman civilization welcomed its final moment. On May 29, 1453, after a siege of dozens of days, Constantinople fell. Constantine I died for his country. The Ottomans then conquered the Morea in 1460, Trebizond in 1461, Thea Duro in 1475, and Epirus in 1479. By this time, all the Greek-Roman civilized states were destroyed, but the exiled Roman scholars moved to Italy, and the Renaissance flourished. The Grand Prince of Moscow, Ivan II, announced that he would inherit the status of the protector of orthodoxy. The Third Rome appeared on the stage of history. Mehmed II, who conquered Constantinople, immediately made it his capital. A new Mediterranean world empire kicked off. Roman civilization finally came to an end. The New World certainly did not have a boat to carry it, but it personally opened the door to the New World for those who came after. The German scholar J. Hering once said, "Rome has conquered the world 3 times. The first time was by force, the second time was by religion, and the third time was by law. The empire of force will eventually disappear in smoke. The empire of religion often hesitates. The empire of thought will last forever. The breath of Rome as a country has long been exhausted. Its republican government and rule of law opened the precedent for modern politics. Its rhetoric and sculpture were the source of later literature and art. From the classical era, It walked for more than 2,000 years. After a long medieval period, although it was defeated at the time of the geographical discoveries and the setting of sails, it still existed even though it was destroyed, and it was still alive even though it was dead. The 7 hills of the Tiber stand to form a city. The clouds on the mountaintops want to be read, crossing 1,000 years to settle the mountains on rivers, striving for 100 generations to pacify the sea. The splendid and special literature and the beautiful pavilions, the true aim and the code of lost and with weapons. Going east, now CUOTUO- to waste time, to let's lip, the broken body, in the West River the people are lonely. With the heart to restore, the torch is passed on. Powerless to turn the tide, it is difficult to change. The great yin leads to the west, and the city is broken. The star and moon rise in the east, making the name Rome. The martyrs will eventually have a day of old age. The green history will be preserved to respect the sea and river.